Welcome to Watching the Throne.
A lyrical analysis of Kanye West.
My name's Chris Lambert.
My name is Travis Bean, and today we're talking about Off the Grid.
And real fast, I wanted to give a shout out to Amazon Music. They are featuring our podcast, Watching the Throne, the one that you're listening to right now, on their Hidden Gems collection. So we are officially, according to Amazon Music, a hidden gem. So you can listen to this episode if you want on Amazon via Amazon Music on that platform, or even by giving a shout out to Alexa. She now recognizes us, which is great.
That is awesome. Actually, now that you say that, let me test something out. Podcasters, could you turn the volume up on your phone? Okay. Alexa, play Off the Grid by Kanye West. And it should just be playing in the background while you listen to the episode, and that's great.
Now say thank you to Travis for getting you some good music.
I'm honored to be part of the Hidden Gems. I feel like Kanye used to be a hidden gem in the hip-hop industry.
Right, from that 2000 to 2003 period, Kanye was the hiddenest of gems, or the gemmiest of hiddens.
Absolutely. I think that's right. And now he's the GOAT, and I think that's what this podcast will become someday.
Right. Soon, Amazon will be featuring us, not in the hidden gems, but on just the homepage.
Yeah, the public goats.
Yeah, you go to Amazon Music, you go to Amazon, and it's just us sitting there being like, what do you want to buy?
Oh, let's guide you through some Kanye purchases you can make. Over here's the Yeezus book.
Unfortunately, it's not.
Actually, no, you can't buy that right now.
Yeah, but Raising Kanye, that's still available.
Yeah, you should probably buy Raising Kanye for sure.
Or for your collection, a vinyl of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy.
There's probably a bootleg of Yeezus on there somewhere.
Beautiful. Perfect. So, Off the Grid?
Off the Grid. Man, how are you feeling about this one, Chris? Like, this is of like all the songs we've ever done in the show, to me, this is one of the more intimidating ones.
Yeah, this is definitely... I mean, we were going to do it last week, and I was just like, I don't think we're prepared to do this. And it's like one of those things, because going through it, the preparation for the line-by-line analysis wasn't that difficult, right? In the way that doing Blood on the Leaves or New Slaves or even No More Parties in LA just was a little more intense in terms of the references, the callbacks. And maybe that's just something with the initial analysis of the song. Maybe a year from now, I'll be like, how silly I was saying that it didn't compare to those. But I found at least the initial run through, like a lot of the stuff was just like, okay, I'm getting the energy that they're putting out, some of the topics that they're covering, but it didn't feel like there was a ton of major connections to get through. Some key parts here and there, but then at the same time, I think the difficult part is just finding the context for this and figuring out the best way to express the role that this song is playing on the album. And from that perspective, it has been much more difficult than some of the other songs because there is something very positive to this song in a lot of ways, but also there's still kind of a negative aspect. I don't know. It's just left us, I think, a little bit in a gray area in terms of classifying this.
Yeah, right.
In a way that some of the other songs don't have that issue.
It is tough. Like it's the balance of this show, because on the one hand, if you're just listening to the song, it sounds fantastic. Like maybe of all the songs on the album, like it's technically the best. Like it's the most in tune with mainstream hip hop. It features like two up and coming players in the hip hop game and like delivering great verses. Kanye like delivers an awesome verse like out of nowhere. The song goes from Squirtle to what's the second one? War Turtle. What's that guy's name? Whatever. To Blastoise, where like you see like it evolve. Like we had Fivio's verse and we had Kanye's verse. Like it becomes this larger than life posse cut. It's a cool song and it sounds great. But then like what we do for this show, we're like, we want everything to make sense and fit together, which mostly Donda seems to. Like we see a storyline happening throughout, which means every song has a place, and you get to Off the Grid and you're like, what's its place? It's weird because posse cuts on Kanye's albums usually do have a place. Like you think of Monster on My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and it's such a perfect song as Kanye enters the fantasy and has all of his like friends around him, like all of these people that are in this fantasy world. Like it does such a magnificent job of painting that landscape and bringing you into like what his life is like. To whereas this, you're like, man, like you wonder, like, are all of the lyrics like on topic? Like, are they all getting at the same idea like they do on Monster? I mean, on Monster, all they're doing is like talking about being monsters. It's pretty simple. but on this, even like you want that thing to grab onto and understand. And I think as we go through the song, like maybe we'll get a better idea of it. But from a distant look, like it's such a jam-packed song. There are so many lyrics to unpack. There's so much going on that it's really hard to pinpoint what that one thing is.
Yeah, I think because we look at Remote Control, right, and something like Remote Control's more compact than this, and yeah. You can kind of get at the key components of Kanye at the start of Remote Control, essentially saying I'm the one that has the remote control, and then this switch happens where suddenly God has the remote control. And you're like, okay, so this is getting at the idea of control. This is getting at the idea of letting go of some of the sense of power and responsibility, where Kanye felt like he was the one making the decisions. And that was something that follows up on Lord, I Need You, where Kanye says that he's giving up. What's the specific line? It is, I give up on doing things my way. So Remote Control kind of foreshadows that line later. And, maybe there's something to that in the sense that Off the Grid is very much Kanye doing things his way, right?
Right.
And him very much having the remote control in his hand. And we're just seeing the earliest version of that. And then the development over time of Kanye saying, all right, doing things my way and me feeling like I have control of the situation is clearly not working out for me. And that's the context that we should put this song into, is that it's just the early portion of the album where Kanye is trying to do things his way, and it's a little more complicated or complicating, as this song does get into a lot of antagonisms between Kanye and the world at large.
Right.
Which is what the idea of Off the Grid kind of comes back to, right? When somebody talks about moving off the grid or going off the grid, they're talking about disconnecting from society, from governments, from social media. Even Kanye moving out to Wyoming. I always thought of this song because we first saw this on the track list on 2020. When Kanye announced the album was going to be called Donda, Off the Grid was one of the songs. And I remember thinking it was going to be a Wyoming song. Like it had to be, right?
Right.
He moved from Los Angeles to Wyoming in a ranch in Wyoming, kind of away from towns, out in the middle of nowhere. And it seemed like it was going to be his cowboy anthem. And the song at this point there's no Wyoming reference in this entire album, right?
Right.
But it does still feel like it has a bit of that energy. Like, we off the grid, this is for my kid. Like, and I think back to when he made the Follow God music video? Where at the end he talks about owning the land and the fact that they have all these acres of land in Wyoming now and how meaningful that is. Or is that the what's the other song that he made the music video for?
Closed on Sunday.
Yeah, Closed on Sunday. If it was at the end of that music video where they just talk about the conversation he and his dad had, and he's like, yeah, we own all this land now, and this is for like,
it was the Follow
our
God
kids.
video.
Okay, it was the Follow God video. This is for like next generations. This is for our kids. So I think some of that energy kind of like comes through with this, but it also feels like Kanye in some ways looking to disconnect or distance himself from society, which isn't inherently a negative thing, but I think in the where he eventually arrives at on this album, we're seeing a contrast between this negative interactions he's having with society and maybe some more positive interactions that he's having by the end of the album.
Yeah. It's funny because I think you're right about that it fits into the album that way, that at first Kanye is kind of not necessarily closed off, but it does make me think of like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and Cruel Summer, where Kanye felt the need to like escape. You know, he went to Hawaii, he surrounded himself with friends and people who were like-minded and empowered him so he could push out all the negative energy going on in the world. But by the end of this album, we see him being a little more open and communal and inviting, much calmer when talking about God and trying to work things out with Kim. Like there's definitely a change in character. So you could look at this song as being planned out in that sense. But I think also part of the power of this song is just how in the moment it feels. Like this to me makes me happy that I was part of all the listening parties because like some part of me wanted to be like, ignore the listening parties, just like wait for the music, like don't let it cloud your judgment. But watching this song like slowly come together, especially thinking about like Kanye's beef with Drake and how his verse came after all that happened and how you could read some of the lines like targeted towards people like that. Like there's something about this song that is very in the moment and real. In that energy of like being off the grid like comes in full force because of that. Like you can really tell that that's the energy he's channeling here, and that's the vibe he was on when he made the song. And I don't know, like so like there's a balance there. Like it does feel like it fits, but it also feels like almost improvisatory. Is that the word?
Yeah,
like
improvisatory,
like
improvisational.
Yeah, it really was like birthed in the moment and represent it, and that's what makes the song difficult to define, because like I know what you're saying, like parts of the song feel negative, especially thinking about where he goes later in the album, because you know it's much better to be nicer to people and to want to work things out with your wife and you know all that stuff, and you think at the beginning of the album here and like oh, Kanye's like so angry and like wants to fight people and is so defensive, like that can't be the state you want to be in. Yet like I don't know, like this song to me is Kanye, like is in the moment. Like this is what Kanye is like from moment to moment when he just like goes into the studio and is like making a song like this. Like this song is so Kanye in so many ways that it can't necessarily be bad. So it's part of like this journey, this grand journey we're seeing Kanye go on throughout the album, where like he's just always being himself. And when he's himself, you know, as we found out from like Ye and Kids See Ghosts, he's talking about bipolar disorder and his relationship with God. Different parts of him come out, and it may not always be like the prettiest thing, but he's always like thinking of God and thinking of moving forward and growing, like even if it makes him like look bad. He's kind of fearless in that way. So like this song I think kind of captures that.
Yes, like there's a ton of that energy, and we were talking ahead of time, as you just mentioned, like the previous albums, like some of these dichotomies that exist on Ye, Kids See Ghosts, Jesus is King, and that those dichotomies are never as simple as purely negative than purely positive, but just always part of the whole. And I would argue, as you're just saying, that that's the case here as well. It's just part of the whole and not necessarily as one-dimensional as like, see, Kanye's bad at the beginning and he's good by the end. One of the interesting things to note is that Donda's Place had posted an original Donda track list that came from a photo by Real Ab Liva. I may not be saying that right, but that's just how the lines are breaking up for me. So at Real Ab Liva, and you see them looking at the dry erase board that has one of the earliest versions of the Donda track list, and it's Jail, No Child Left Behind, God Breathes, South Carolina, Never Abandon Your Family, Heaven and Hell, Come to Life, Life of the Party, Hurricane, Daylight, Remote, Junior, New Again, and 24. And next to each track, Kanye has a single word. So next to jail, it says freedom. Next to No Child Left Behind, it says motivation. Next to God Breathes, it says anointed. South Carolina, reflection. Never abandon your family, it's how could you? Heaven and Hell is anti, which I'm guessing means like antithesis. Come to Life is family. Life of the Party's clarity. Hurricane is rescued. Daylight's personal. Remote is control. Junia's leadership. New Again's revival. And 24's rejoice. So you can see in that track list that even when you did have some of the more dramatic songs on the album, like Jail and Never Abandon Your Family and Heaven and Hell, that Kanye wasn't necessarily using negative words to describe those songs.
Right.
Even God Breathes, right, is just anointed. There's something powerful in that, even though when we did our analysis of God Breathe, we looked at it as a little more, mixed when it came to the highs and lows of that song.
Right.
And it's possible that song continued to go through some changes with Vori's addition. But I think that gets at what you're saying, that Off the Grid isn't necessarily supposed to be so negative, the same way that Jail isn't necessarily supposed to be so negative, or Jonah or Okay, but that we do see Kanye kind of reflecting on these singular concepts that over the course of the album kind of imbue the album with these themes. But overall, what we're seeing even in that original track list with those words, it's clarity, rescued, control, revival, rejoice. There's definitely a swing towards much more like purely positive and uplifting themes. So I'd imagine like Off the Grid, if he was putting a single word to it, would just be something like tensions or I don't know what word you'd want to pick, but it's just getting into some aspect with society that I think plays off of Jail really well as we start to get into the lyrics. And we'll see in Kanye's initial verse some of this idea, or the beginning of Kanye's verse, some of this idea of tensions with society that can start to arise.
Yeah. I mean, you could already see some positive progression just looking at the track list as it is now, going from Jail, you know, you feel in prison and you want to break free, to God Breathe, like God is giving you this power to break free, to Off the Grid, to where like you've been empowered to move beyond the control of these negative forces and be your own person and be the Kanye, you know, we've always known.
Right. And it could be as simple as that. Like you go from Jail to God Breathing, which like anoints you, empowers you, to Off the Grid, and you're kind of getting away from the jail and feeling some kind of rescue from that. I mean, that's what Hurricane was supposed to be. That was the word next to it, was rescued. So it could kind of go into that vein of, you know, I've moved away. I still have some thoughts on jail and society, but like at least I'm out of jail right now.
All right. When are we going to jump into these lyrics?
All right, let's jump into them. We start with a what, a yeah, a boy, and a what.
Well, we start with those creepy graveyard noises, which is just like, it's so cool coming out of God Breathe, which is like, you know, 2.5 minutes of that crap. Not crap in a bad way, but just like, gosh, it's like you're really sucked into like this creepy vibe. I'm trying to use less intense language for the YouTube channel so we don't get, you know, so we can satisfy all of our advertisers. But
yeah,
it is cool like to move from that to like the beginning of this. Like it's a seamless transition for it to like then take off. Like we've sat through all of this like murk and grimy sounds, and then it continues here, but then like, and there's no bass at all, and then right when Kanye comes in, like big bass, like the synth blows up and gains personality. It's like no longer just like the sound that's creeping in the background. It's like it feels like it's part of everything, and Kanye's just like in the thick of it.
Yeah, it's definitely the most energy we've gotten so far, right? Like Jail is cool, but there's something to the space that Jail creates, and kind of the methodicalness of both the production and a lot of the verses and delivery. Yeah. And then God Breathes definitely has an energy to it as well, but it's not necessarily accelerating. Off the Grid is the first song that really feels like it's accelerating.
Yeah. It feels like a moment where Kanye's kind of powering through the muck. Like he's becoming, like at first his voice is really buried, which people keep talking about, like, you know, the mixing issues. I think this is totally purposeful at first for his voice to be so buried and then to come in more full. And then by the time he's delivering his verse, he's big and loud. Like it's him slowly rising out of it and like it not being dominated by it. It reminds me a lot of Kids See Ghosts, the just the production on like this song and God Breathed and Praise God. Like it's really like creepy and ghostly, and Kanye like becomes such a part of it. And again, not in a bad way, because I think Kanye's overcome a lot of his demons, but like he's no longer buried by them. He's like kind of almost rising above them, or like has that energy in, you know, his Kanye way.
You could even take it the extra step, right, and say that when his vocals are buried, he's like in the grid, lost in the grid, and then
right.
By the time we get his like major verse and his vocals aren't buried at all, it's because he's off the grid and standing on his I don't know.
I like that.
I don't know how much I buy into it, but you could make the argument.
Be a musical theorist with me.
Yeah. So the chorus starts with Kanye just saying, "We off the grid. This for my kid. For when my kids have kids, everything we did for the crib." Which, you know, this idea of generational wealth is not something that's new to Kanye or new to hip hop in general. Did I just say the word general wrong? To hip hop in general. But I do think that, as we stated early on, that it's something that Kanye was really thinking about with the Wyoming land. Like, whether he's living there at this point or not, I don't think Kanye has been to Wyoming in 2021. Or at least if he has, we haven't seen it. But the idea that they have this land and property in Wyoming is kind of a big deal. And just all the property that Kanye kind of owns at this point. So like the house that they have in Los Angeles, I'm guessing like other properties that they have in Paris or wherever, it's kind of a big deal to have these things that you can pass on to your kids.
Yeah. It's an interesting part of Kanye. I feel like this is a motif in Kanye's career, where what he defines as home, going from Chicago to Los Angeles to Wyoming, which like does represent off the grid, but now like he is truly off the grid. Like I don't think he lives like any one place anymore. He's just like is a vagabond almost. And it makes me think of like, you know, he did this for the kids, like he's building his wealth, you know, getting all this land, like that is for his kids, and to like give future generations this advantage that he didn't have, or, you know, the Black community at large hasn't had. But then to say like everything we did for the crib, like I think that's the most interesting part, because like when you say crib, I think of one place, yet Kanye is this person who no longer has a place. So is he talking about like the crib at home in Los Angeles, like where he can raise his kids? Like he's doing all this like for them at home, so like they can grow up, I don't know, just like in a better spot? Or does he just like, when he says the crib, like is he just saying like wherever my kids go from here on out, like the world is your oyster kind of thing?
It could also just be making a play on the idea of the house, but also on like a literal crib. So when he says for when my kids have kids, like they'll be in cribs. Like I'm doing this for the kids, like for the children in the cribs, like so to speak.
Yeah, great point.
Everything we did is for the babies, the next generation.
The baby yays.
The baby yays, which does play into No Child Left Behind, I think. And this idea that you have early on him saying like, this is for my kid, everything we did is for the crib. And then the last song, or the conclusion or epilogue for this album, is No Child Left Behind, which feels like it goes from like personal to Kanye and Kanye's lineage to something much more broader, right?
Yeah.
To not just his family, but everyone in general. So you can maybe start to make an argument in terms of like contrast between the personal and the global, or even just this idea of he's very concerned about future generations. and he's doing everything that he can for not just himself but future generations.
Yeah. Everything you're saying reminds me of God breathed when he says, before the sons and the daughters, before the sun and the water. And of course, that's talking about like the beginning of time, Adam and Eve and like the first sons and daughters. But it does make me think forward on the album where, he talks about the sons and daughters who are disenfranchised on Jesus Lord. And this whole theme of the album of becoming a kid again and thinking about your own kids and what you can do for them. And now looking at it off the grid, like another reference to kids. It's interesting that he's laying those seeds this early in this kind of antagonistic part of the album where like he feels this need to build something for his kids in a very defensive kind of way. But later on, it becomes a little bit more, I don't know, he just becomes a little more humble and peaceful and aware of like the problems that face the world and like what he can do in a more in a less mean way, less defensive way.
Well, I think this kind of goes back to the remote control and what we were talking about with Kanye feeling like he has the remote control in the early part, and then in the second half he gives the remote control to God.
Right.
And this does feel like Kanye in a sense saying like, I'm doing this for the kids, like this, like everything that I'm doing, that we're doing is for the kids. And then by the end, it's almost like, no, God will take care of everything. Like I'm still going to take actions, but it's almost like here it's kind of what we talked about on Jesus is King, where on God, Kanye gets pretty defensive towards the end in terms of needing to do things and not wanting to pay taxes because he's concerned about being able to provide for his family. And the very next song is Everything We Need, which is this realization of, you don't have to worry about that stuff because God is going to provide. And it's a real big tipping point on the album in terms of tone, as you can kind of go back to Sella, Follow God, Closed on Sunday, and On God, and see that Kanye is acting in a far more defensive way regarding everything, where he feels like he has to take these actions. But then after Everything We Need, he's realizing, no, God will kind of handle things. And maybe a similar kind of dichotomy is occurring on this album.
Yeah. I mean, we did look ahead because on God Breathed, he says, I know he got his hands on this. And like you said, a remote control, God just grabbed my hand, had a bigger plan. I keep my spirit alive. Like my life is in his hands. Like you definitely start to see that progression. And it's, you're totally right on this song. Like he doesn't sound like he thinks he needs any help at all.
You made a good point about pointing out Jesus Lord as well, because that's another thong. That's another song.
You thinking about the thong song?
Thinking of the thong song. Who's not thinking of Cisco at all points in time?
He's more relevant now than ever.
the original and true dragon. But you look at Jesus Lord, and that song concludes with Larry Hoover Jr. talking about his father, Larry Hoover Sr., being in jail and the impact it's had not only on him, but on his kids. And one of the standout lines is that Larry Hoover has never gotten to hug his grandchildren, and the grandchildren never gotten to hug their grandfather. So you have an example later on the album where somebody got put into jail, and it has affected not just that person's kid, but their kids' kids. And you can imagine in some way their kids. And Larry Hoover Jr. even says that it feels like they've been in prison too, because of having to deal with his father being in prison most of his life and all of his kids' life. So while it's kind of ethereal here, what's going on, or a little disconnected or ungrounded, by the time we get to Jesus Lord, you're seeing kind of this concept or the reverse element of it put into practice, and seeing what happens when negative influences can affect like kids and the kids of kids.
Yeah. Wow. It's such a prominent part of this. I mean, in true fashion of the show, like we'll discover it as we go along, but like right now it really just seems like it's going to be a really powerful theme of this album.
Yeah. It's super relevant throughout. All right, so verse 1, everything we did, how we live, you know?
I'm laughing. I'm laughing at the idea. Oh wait. Oh, sorry. So this is verse 1. Okay. I don't even know if I consider like this part and Playboi Carti's part like verses. they still feel like they're easing into the song where like Fivio takes off. You know.
Yeah, right. It's like a pre-verse
Yeah.
almost. But Genius has it labeled as a verse.
No, that's fine.
So the everything we did, how we live, you can tie that back. It feels very fragmentary here, but I think it's calling back to just the chorus, everything we did for the crib. So it's like everything we did, how we live, all is that is for the kids, and for the crib, and like for the lifestyle and finances and everything to make sure that your family is like set. I think Kanye follows that up with all this smoke got a scent.
Love it.
Which Kanye has talked about wanting all the smoke before. It's a phrase that's become popular in the last few years in terms of tensions or antagonisms. So if you're going to say something that's pissing people off, you want all the smoke that's going to come from that.
Yeah.
Or all the heat, right? Like it's going to create a fire and you want the smoke.
Right.
So Kanye's just saying like all this smoke that he's created through everything that he did and how he lives has got a particular scent to it. But he doesn't classify that scent as, you know, a good thing, a negative thing. He doesn't describe it in any way. He's just saying that it has a peculiar or a particular scent.
Based on the scent, you know it's Kanye.
You know, is it the scent of money? Is it the scent of outrage? What is the scent? But really what that does is it sets up the line, all that smoke heaven sent, which I think is what Kanye wants to get at.
Which is an awesome line.
Right? Because to him, he's viewing it as the smoke that he gets from the public, from other people. All of these negatives end up being part of God's plan to test Kanye, to level him up, to evolve him, which is one of the reasons why he lives for this, right? Is that anything that sets him back, he understands is only going to push him further ahead. So all the smoke that he gets is just a learning tool.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, reading this line, like, I thought it was such a badass line, but it immediately made me think of it like in a whirlwind of a flashback scene in a movie. It took me back to Sunday school in junior high. And I remember, like, the 10 Commandments is what I think of in the book of Exodus, and Moses talking to God at the top of Mount Sinai, and God, like, the whole chapter 19 is about like God like commanding Moses and showing the people that he exists, and he's going to show the people he exists by creating this fire and all the smoke around at the top of the mountain, and like trumpets are blaring. It's this like majestic image, and I always thought I think that's really cool. I don't know if Kanye's channeling that here, but I immediately thought of this when he talked about smoke being heaven sent. Because there is this idea that, we're talking about this song and whether or not, like, the image Kanye's giving off is, like, good or bad. Like, is this how Kanye wants to be seen? Like, is this really the Christ-like thing to do? But there's a history of smoke in the Bible. I searched the word smoke in the Bible, and it's almost always used in relation to God as an expression of, like, his grandness and his power. And the smoke isn't always necessarily, if you look at it that way, it's not necessarily like a bad thing. It's this representation of God, of like who he is and how much power he has. And so like this inherently good image of God, who is there to deliver like a good message and bring goodness to the world, can be given off in what could be seen as an intimidating, like bad image, smoke, fire, thunder, trumpets, like all this is suddenly paired with God. And I can't help but feel like Kanye's channeling that a little bit, that it's not that, all the smoke around Kanye is a bad thing. Like this, Kanye's being Kanye, this is the way he was raised to be, like create smoke. And he thinks he's on a mission from God. he believes he's on a mission from God, and he thinks he's preaching the word of God, and he's creating good in the world. And I can't help but think like that's where part of the song is coming from then. Like, even if Kanye has ironic intentions storytelling wise, I don't know if he does necessarily, but the fact that he's trying to create this bigger image of himself to, you know, give off this idea that God is breathing on this, like God is part of this song. You do that through smoke, through this image that you can see in the Bible of like a representation of God in this moment, or, you know, he's giving the 10 Commandments to Moses. I feel like that's all part of this, and makes this line like elevate.
Do you mind if I read Exodus 19?
Oh, please do.
All right. So Exodus 19, New International Version of the Bible. So it's at Mount Sinai on the first day of the third month after the Israelites left Egypt. So you remember all of the plagues, Moses being like, let my people go, them fleeing, and then Pharaoh being like, no, come back here. I'm sure all of you have watched the Rugrats special on this, you know?
Of course.
And then Moses uses his staff, God parts the Red Sea, they go through, and then the sea collapses in on the Egyptians. And then the Israelites wander in the desert, I believe, for 40 years. But this is just the third month, you know? They came to the desert of Sinai. After they set out from Rephidim, they entered the desert of Sinai, and Israel camped there in the desert in front of the mountain. Then Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain and said, this is what you are to say to the descendants of Jacob, and what you are to tell the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites. So Moses went back and summoned the elders of the people and set before them all the words the Lord had commanded him to speak. The people all responded together, we'll do everything the Lord has said. So Moses brought their answer back to the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, I'm going to come to you in a dense cloud, so that the people will hear me speaking with you and will always put their trust in you. Then Moses told the Lord what the people had said. And the Lord said to Moses, go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. Have them wash their clothes and be ready by the third day, because on that day the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. Put limits for the people around the mountain and tell them, be careful that you do not approach the mountain or touch the foot of it. Whoever touches the mountain is to be put to death. Like, wow. They're to be stoned or shot with arrows. Not a hand is to be laid on them. No person or animal shall be permitted to live. Only when the ram's horn sounds a long blast may they approach the mountain, which is in the Jewish community, the shofar. So after Moses had gone down the mountain to the people, he consecrated them and they washed their clothes. Then he said to the people, prepare yourselves for the third day, abstain from sexual relations, which there were rumors that Kanye was telling people that were working on, what was it, Jesus is King?
Yeah.
Not to have sex while working on the album. So I wonder if that's where he got this from, or got that from. Yeah. On the morning of the third day, there was thunder and lightning with a thick cloud over the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast. Everyone in the camp trembled. Then Moses led the people out of the camp to meet God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was covered with smoke because the Lord descended on it in fire. The smoke billowed up from it like smoke from a furnace, and the whole mountain trembled violently. As the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and the voice of God answered him. The Lord descended to the top of Mount Sinai and called Moses to the top of the mountain. So Moses went up, and the Lord said to him, go down, God, and warn the people so they do not force their way through to see the Lord, and many of them perish. Even the priests who approach the Lord must consecrate themselves, and the Lord will break out against them. Just making Moses march up and down this mountain.
But he's old as
Moses,
shit.
I know, right? Moses said to the Lord, the people cannot come up Mount Sinai because you yourself warned us. Put limits around the mountain, set it apart as holy. The Lord replied, go down and bring Aaron up with you. But the priests and the people must not force their way through to come up to the Lord, or he will break out against them. He really wants to break out. So Moses went down to the people and told them. And then it's after that you get the 10 Commandments. And Moses comes down with these slabs and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So a pretty big moment in the Bible, but as you're describing it, right, there's something that's there's that difference between just the smoke referring to the public tension and then the smoke that refers to like the embodiment of God, God's presence on earth. And the idea that you're getting like the 10 Commandments, that you're getting these important lessons from the smoke is interesting as well. And then also that it's Exodus. Like Exodus is the section of the Bible where the Israelites are leaving Egypt and going out into the desert, and here the song's called Off the Grid, which implies kind of an exodus from social media, from society, from the public.
You're crazy if you don't think Kanye's aware of that.
Right? So then Kanye says, everything I spoke, what I meant. So just everything that I say is what I mean. And what I mean is what I say. And then never disguise my intent, lines outside the event.
I was part of that line.
You know, maybe we were part of that line. Maybe he's telling, you know, us, everything I spoke, what I meant, no disguise my intent. Maybe he's saying that none of my albums have any irony or any,
you mean telling us directly, us two?
Yeah, telling you and I directly, like, you know, I never disguise my intent. What I say in my albums is what I say.
I always think there's artistic intent, so I agree with him.
Lines outside the events, brought my life out the trench. So, yeah, I think that's the lines outside the event is a little more relevant in the idea that he gets all this smoke, and there's this idea that the public is angry at him, that they might be trying to cancel him, but yet he still has lines outside the event, which might be because he's being so authentic and staying true to what he says and what he means.
That's an interesting way to look at this. Like this antagonistic part of himself, somebody who's really in your face and combats the negative energy from a lot of the public. Like the fact that he is that way is what inspires a lot of people and why a lot of people like him, that he's like that. So maybe that becomes the balance of the album in a way and maybe that's always been a part of Kanye's balance, is that like being that way, like does empower people. And like, it's important to be true to yourself and to like, you know, defend yourself, but you also have to think about those people like very close to you in your life and how that affects them and like how you need to be with them, you know?
That's true. That is true.
Yeah.
Oh, and you know what the smoke made me think about as well? Reborn. When Kanye says, I was off the chain, I was often drained, I was off the meds, I was called insane. What an awesome thing, engulfed in shame. I want all the rain, I want all the pain, I want all the smoke, I want all the blame. It's not the first time he's talked about like wanting smoke and viewing it as a positive despite the negative aspects of it.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking about that line actually, how like the smoke surrounds him, like the smoke is being brought to him, but in this song, like he's bringing the smoke.
Right.
I like it.
I got this smoke. Brought my life out the trench. Yeah. Went from Chicago and like his mom like doing her best to provide a home in Chicago to being a billionaire.
Yeah, not bad.
God, thank God, look what he did. We off the grid. What? Just Cardi coming through. We off the grid. So it's like God bringing Kanye's life out of the trench, blessing him in the way that he did, was the thing that allowed Kanye to kind of get off the grid. And then Playboi Carti's verse starts. Is there anything production-wise between that verse and this verse to talk about?
Not really. Like the music is cool. Like I don't need to go into like the nuance of it and everything, but the way the music like dips in and out, and like it allows this song to have personality, to have fluctuation throughout in a way that I think needs to happen for a song this long to remain like as interesting as it remains the whole time.
Yes. Okay, so we get Cardi saying, I'm off the grid. Homicide, what?
This is just like Playboi Carti. I gotta say, like, I really like Playboi Carti, and you know, he does that like mumble rap thing. It's all experimental, which again is like, I don't even know if I consider this a verse, but more of like an introduction to the song's feel and just like the energy of it. Like, I really dig his verse, even if I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
He's talking about homicide, what? I got tattoos on my ribs.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I just tatted my kid Onyx, which the phrasing of that, I just want to just say phrasing.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like he's saying, I put a tattoo on my kid.
Yes, it does.
Which people being like, what do you call when, like, the Child Protective Service? Like,
Yeah.
he's tattooing his child. But what he's saying is he just got a tattoo of his kid Onyx, so he got Onyx across like his throat area.
Yeah.
And then I just threw 20, count it. We was at Onyx, so he's playing it between the family aspect where he loves his son and gets a tattoo of his son, to going to this strip club in Atlanta called Onyx, and he's just throwing away all this money at the strip club. So, the dichotomy of being a rap superstar.
Also, an interesting energy to bring to this album, where the theme of like having kids and like becoming a kid again and all that, and on the song Kanye talking about his kids, and then for here Playboi Carti to juxtapose his kid with like a strip club. I don't know, it's kind of weird.
It's a little strange. And I mean, it's part of a triptych, right? It's I just had my kid, I just threw 20, and I just bought me some brand new clothes. So you're getting like a little bit of the flash and pomp. Like you're seeing Father Carti, you're seeing Playboi Carti, and you're seeing like fashion level Carti. So Carti is kind of showcasing these different aspects or elements of himself, his life, that are possible because he's successful or because he's off the grid in this way. If off the grid is supposed to represent this idea of being wealthy, famous, or disconnected from society in a positive way.
Yeah. And in that way, like, I feel like Playboi Carti's verse, like, it makes the song more interesting and gives it a little more power, that like there is some trivialness to it, that it is so braggadocio in this verse, and it is like it's heartwarming for a second talking about his kid, and then it like throws that to the wayside. Like it allows the song to be more than just like Kanye's on a mission and he's only doing good,
Right, it's a little more complicating than that. Yeah. And Dover Street Market is like a top high-end place that has fancy clothes from fancy designers. So a little bit of a I looked up photos of it, and they have displays from all of these high-end designers throughout their store. So it's a little bit of a, what do you call that? Like a middleman or a marketplace?
Oh,
I guess
sure.
that's why they call it a market.
It's like a Macy's.
Yeah. That would be insulting to Dover Street Market. Hey, you're like a Macy's. They just kick you out. But the ad lib is Givenchy, which Playboi Carti's really close friends with the head of Givenchy. But okay, we just took the route to Charlotte.
I don't know.
Okay.
I assume that's Charlotte, North Carolina. That's near Atlanta.
Yeah. I'd imagine, right? So you're going from Atlanta to Charlotte. Is Carti from Charlotte?
He's from Atlanta.
No, he's born in Atlanta. Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Maybe that's just something we don't have the context or the info for.
I tried Googling it, but I couldn't find anything that had to do with Charlotte and Playboi Carti, other than that he's played a concert in Charlotte before.
Yeah. I don't know if it could be something like you think about. Like I immediately think of Pusha T lines where he talks about like drug running from this city to this other city. I don't know if that's necessarily in Carti's lyrical content to have that same kind of reference.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, if you know of anything and you want to explain it to us, by all means.
Please do.
Yeah. But he says, I'm in the Rolls Royce on what you call it?
I love that.
I light it up. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm on a Rolls Royce on, what's he saying?
I don't know. It
I
just
guess
seems
I don't
like
get
so
it.
in the moment. I don't know what it means, but it's just like a line full of personality, and like she just doesn't care that it sounds ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, I guess he could be saying like, I'm in the Rolls Royce, so I'm in this fancy ass car, right?
Yeah.
And I'm on something, but he doesn't know
Yes.
what the something is called.
I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Okay. So on some kind of like drug,
Yeah.
designer drug, interesting drug. Okay. I light a op blunt and and then it's censored. I guess you could add in, whether he's referring to let your guy try it or let your girl try it.
I think it's, yeah, so it'd be your girl, I think.
Okay. Either way, it still kind of gets at the same thing. Like lighting an op blunt has become slang for like you smoke a ops pack with when this person dies, you're smoking them as a sign of disrespect.
Right.
Or like smoking their ashes, which has become kind of a popular phrase, not just in hip hop, but on social media in general. But it's become something that was associated with gangs and has progressed from that to actual just like social media cancellations. Right. And yeah. But there's an extra level of disrespect of not just smoking the ops blunts, but then having somebody associated with them smoke it as well. Because if it is like a girl, like not only did you kill your opponent, but now you're sleeping with a girl and like making her smoke the blunt as well. Like the disrespect.
Yeah.
And then it's I'm off the grid and wanna. Is it the F word and wanna die?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what the bleeped word is there. This is the moment where like I'm glad Kanye wants to make a clean album, but it seems weird to like make a clean album after the fact. And like I don't know what he says here at all, and it makes me like it makes me wonder like is this supposed to be like a really deep line that like puts this whole verse in perspective, but like I don't know what he says. So
yeah, because if it is how Genius has it, where if you remove the curse word, it just reads as I'm off the grid and want to die, which that is a dramatic way to end the verse. Because if it's him talking, you could imagine him saying it to someone else, right? Like I'm off the grid and want like my opponents to die, but that doesn't seem to be what is being said.
Yeah.
Or I'm off the grid and want guys to die, like could be saying that, but to suddenly be turning it to himself is very pointed and kind of throws like the whole thing for a loop, because it goes from something that's very like celebratory of being off the grid to something that's like very depressing.
It's something I wouldn't really understand.
Yeah,
like, I wouldn't know how we got here.
Yeah, I mean, is it just him revealing like a sudden depression that wasn't present in the rest of the verse? In which case, like, damn. But then at the same time, can you get is that enough? Like,
it makes me think that can't be what he's saying. So like, I don't really know what this last line means, and if I ignore it, the rest of the verse is like just what it is, and you're getting a full picture of how Carti is and how he, thinks of all these people. I don't know. It's a verse that's kind of hard to understand, yet like also like, oh, I fully get Playboi Carti after I hear this verse.
Yeah, his essence really comes through, like the core essence of his style, his interests, like his approach to things. Like it's not far off from like going back and listening to Whole Lotta Red and hearing some of the topics on Whole Lotta Red.
Yeah.
But then that last line, we'll have to re-listen to it and like check the Genius lyrics.
I tried listening to it to understand it, and it does sound like that, like wanna, and then like there's a prolonged silence, like it feels like a long time, and then die. Like I just have no idea what's happening in those moments.
Yeah, maybe he just has like a string of swear words that would make it make more sense if they were to translate to non-swear words.
Right.
But man, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. When we get Playboi Carti on the show, we'll ask him. Which then that transitions back to Kanye's chorus. We off the grid, grid, grid. This for my kid. And this is another moment where the lyrics get shaky or dicey. Because Kanye is very buried here.
Yeah.
And is not only buried, but doing his mumble rapping.
He's very exasperated.
Yeah. And I can't make out everything that he says. And I feel like Genius and Apple Music have the lyrics added, but I don't know how much we can really trust those and how much this was Kanye actually finalizing the verse and or the chorus and delivering it how it was, or if he was just kind of like throwing in some words because he wanted the energy, didn't want to flesh out the flow. And we get some lines that sound like going cray, take some G6, lit 76. And that's supposed to have meaning. I mean, because it also sounds like he says chicken sticks at one point, or cheese sticks. Cheese sticks. That's what it is.
God,
chicken
I hope
sticks
he
aren't a
says
thing.
chicken sticks.
But take some G6 could sound like him saying chicken sticks or cheese sticks.
Are you just hungry for Burger King, Chris? You know those chicken fries they have?
I am hungry. That is true. So I don't know if we want to do anything with the chorus here in terms of a lyrical analysis of lines that we don't even know if they're accurate or not.
Yeah. This is something that's always weird for me expressed on a show that claims itself to be a lyrical analysis show. But like when I first listen to albums, I'm not even really listening to lyrics that much. I'm just like going off the vibe and the energy, which is like why I really like Playboi Carti's lines and like why I like Kanye's verse. Like I really like the energy it's giving off and how it plays into like what I can understand that's happening in the song and the vibe Kanye's trying to give off and like the themes that are happening. But it doesn't mean I know every single word, and I don't know if it's super necessary to know exactly what Kanye's saying here. And like maybe someday if we get actual lyrics and we can understand it better, like it'd be worth diving into. But like you're saying, like, it's really hard to tell what he's actually saying, and going into it without actually knowing seems fruitless.
Yeah. And I mean, the relevant thing would be if you do take the lines at face value, or to say everything we did for the crib did here, flexing with the business trip, going cray, take some G6. There is something to the idea that Kanye has like private jet access, which would be the G6. So he can just travel around anywhere that he wants. Without being beholden to like, where is Southwest traveling? Where is Qantas traveling? He can just get on his own plane. And in that way, it kind of plays into the idea of being off the grid.
Right.
But,
yeah, it's there. But
yeah. So that energy of that brings us to Fivio's verse, which is a pretty long verse.
A pretty awesome verse. Like this is like, to me, this is like the Nicki Minaj moment of the album where you're like, oh, who is this guy? Like, who is this person that can do all this?
Yeah, it definitely feels like a star turning verse where you just want to hear the next project from this person, or even go back and listen to the previous projects and be like, oh, is everything this good?
Yeah.
So Fivio starts off, this is where the production changes a little bit. Do you have?
Yeah, it's just always changing throughout. I didn't take a lot of notes on the production because I wasn't exactly assigning meaning to certain things. It just seemed like in a posse cut that's this long, it has this many bars, like you just want a lot going on.
Okay. Yep.
So maybe there is meaning there, but I'm not smart enough to figure it out.
Okay. So Fivio starts by saying, yeah, look, when I was in jail, I was low key, which him saying jail is immediately should be like a exclamation point above anyone that's keeping track of the thematic development over the course of this album, since it starts with Kanye saying that he's in jail, and now you have Fivio saying like, I have been in jail, like literal jail, not the jail that Kanye is talking about.
Right.
But it's channeling that same energy where we see that, okay, this is starting to be established as a major theme.
Right.
Shout out to supporters that wrote me, eat food, work out, and then go sleep. So this was his life. You know, he had supporters that were still like writing to him, and his life in jail was just eating food, working out, and going to sleep, which is very reduced and basic, and really contrasts in a way to what Carti was just saying, right? Like where he's getting tattoos and like going to strip clubs and going to Dover Street Market and in this Rolls Royce, traveling all about. And then you have Fivio like, I ate food, worked out, and went to sleep.
Yeah, right. And then as we get in the next lines, like God empowered him, which is another divergence from Playboi Carti. It really introduces like the idea of God carrying you.
Yeah, which saying, you know, I'm praying, he carrying both feet, like that gets to the famous footsteps prayer, where they talk about walking along the beach and seeing like two sets of footsteps where it's like yours and Jesus walking beside you. But the person says, but Jesus, in my most difficult moments, I see there's only one set of footsteps. Why did you abandon me? And Jesus kind of pats you on the head and goes, my child, it wasn't that I abandoned you. It's that I was carrying you. And you're like, oh, nice. What a plot twist, you know?
Is that St. Pablo where he talks about he was carrying me?
Yeah, two sets of footsteps, he was carrying me.
Yeah, because I knew we had talked about that poem in the show before, and I couldn't remember, and then suddenly it just came to me.
Yeah, it's St. Pablo specifically, like right before he talks about Larry and me.
Yeah.
I was scared to see. Where is it? Yeah, when I turned on the news and they was burying me, one set of footsteps, you was carrying me.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know I'm praying, he carrying both feet. Guys know we got God with us, which gets back to what you're saying about feeling empowered by God, carried by God. God's presence is something that's uplifting you, the smoke that's there, God's breath. And when I start vibing, I know that he with me, which is a similar thing to what Kanye was saying, God breathed, right? I'm making this song and I might put a band on it. It might get banned off rip. Like God breathed on this. This music is great. And Fivio saying, when I start vibing, when I'm in the pocket, when I'm rapping, when I'm feeling this music, I know that God is present with me.
Chris, I hate to do this, but you did skip a line. You look at me and see a God figure.
Oh, wow. I did skip that line, didn't I?
Which I think is a cool line. It immediately makes me think of like, I'm a God, you know?
Yep. Very much so. Yeah. And just like, I am a God. I'm in the image of God.
Yes. Like it's a very empowering.
With me.
It's like not seen as a egotistical thing to say like, no, there is a God within you.
Yeah, very much. And that then carries over when I start vibing. I know that he with me. There's just something about feeling imbued and empowered and destined in a way.
Totally.
And I'm always catch a hard shiver. I don't think I know what that means.
I guess I just took that as like he's with me, and it's like it's a continuation, and I'm gonna catch a hard shiver. Like the fact that God is part of you is like still sends a shiver down your spine, I guess.
Okay, I know that he with me, and I'm always catch a hard shiver. It just like sending a chill down the spine, sending some kind of like feeling or presence of God within you.
Right.
Okay. I get that. Okay. I know it's demons in that dark liquor. So now we're having this contrast of being imbued with God versus being imbued with demons, which is something that was present on God Breathed. Demons show up on Hurricane. They show up on, was it Praise God too?
I do believe demons are a part of Praise God.
And then Jonah, and then Heaven and Hell. So this dichotomy between God and devil's demons is a big one, and one of the other major points on the album, along with jail and kids. So we're seeing 2 or 3 of the major themes present in this song already that are present on the album as a whole.
Totally.
So you know you can get a shiver from God, or you know you take a shot. Sometimes you get a shiver from taking a shot.
I always do. I get goosebumps.
So I know it's demons in that dark liquor. We all know Kanye's history with Hennessy and the VMAs.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like you get drunk and some things can happen, which also calls back Hold My Liquor.
I like how you're assigning this line to Kanye directly.
Yeah. I mean, it feels relevant.
Yeah. No, I had not thought of it that way, but I like that.
We buy a bottle and squash with you. So you squash the bottle, or you buy a bottle and you squash any beef by drinking together?
It's that, or is it necessarily squashing beef, or is it like, because the next thing is like everybody turns into like a harsh guy. So like, I wondered if squash was meant to be antagonistic. But I guess when you buy a bottle and you drink with people, it's a good thing. I don't know. I was kind of confused by that.
You could view it as just like squashing the bottle, right? Like when you buy a bottle and you drink it.
I've never heard that before, but I'm going to start using it.
I've never heard it either in that way. But who knows? We're introduced to new phrases all the time. Oh yeah, I'm gonna go squash this whiskey. Is that vodka? I'd like to squash that.
Oh, bro, let me squash that.
You want me to squash that for you? I'll squash that.
Hey, you want to go squashing this weekend?
Would you like to squash this weekend? We buy a bottle and squash with you. I mean, it could mean like we buy a bottle and then like fight with you. Like there's a little bit of a row.
Could be.
Maybe it's something about like fighting. Everybody turn into a harsh guy. Yeah. So it seems to imply like you drink and you become a different kind of person. Like you become harsher, more critical, meaner, which kind of plays into that idea of demons and that dark liquor.
Yeah, and that's really the transition happening here, like going from jail and getting out of jail through the power of God. And now we've kind of like tiptoed into this very antagonistic scene where like there's demons and you squash and people are harsh. It's, they squash.
They squash.
We need another word for this. Someone has to tell us what it means.
I can imagine the YouTube comments now. But it also, like, when you're drinking with people, it's more social, right? So it's like you're in jail and you're away from everybody. And now you get out of jail, you're feeling empowered, you go back being around people, and suddenly there's this conflict and this antagonism. And Fivio goes against that by saying, but my pocket's bigger and my heart richer.
Yeah.
Which heart being richer is funny because it's just like I'm a kinder person than you, but also literally like I'm wealthier than you.
I like that.
My mind's smarter, my grind harder, and my car quicker. So he's not going to try to fight these people, right? Or he doesn't need to, or will win if he does, just because he has all the advantages. So there's this contrast now between the other people that are looking to fight him and Fivio himself.
Yeah. That's an interesting energy of the song in general, I think, where like you are defensive of yourself, but you're not necessarily like looking to fight, It's like a different kind of power you're channeling from God.
Yep. You're just feeling superior.
And I feel like Kanye kind of does that too.
I think so. Yeah. And you get Fivio saying, I met her in church, like bringing it back to God, right? She prayed for me. She my God sister, which I think is a like not the literal God sister as in like her parents or my godparents, so she's my God sister, but in just the idea that because they go to church together, they're like siblings in God kind of thing.
Right.
I'm only trusting the people I keep close. That makes sense. Don't just trust anybody. Guys selling their soul for a repost. Ooh. Yeah, social media.
Tell you what, people will sell themselves for that.
They will.
Disgusting.
Like, please, I'll do anything.
Please, Kanye, just follow me on Instagram. I'll do anything.
I have been posting on Instagram more now that Kanye is following. When I woke up, I saw that he followed like 25 more people, and I was like, oh, are we going to be one? And we were not.
Someday.
But we have the Twitter follow,
Yeah. Actually, we should check on that.
Oh yeah, do we still? Do we still?
I'm not actually checking. Do you want me to check?
I'm checking.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, it's good. Just a little live update for the people watching and listening, you know.
We still have the Twitter follow.
Okay.
We still do. Okay. All right. So, guys selling their soul for a repost. Remember when I was broke wearing cheap coats? So, bringing it back to the day, wearing some cheap coats when he was broke. Now it's diamonds and houses and C notes, which, yeah, living that life, getting
Benjamins.
Fancy, expensive things. Yeah, the Benjamins, baby. Guys, I'm feeling marvelous, which I'm saying I'm feeling marvelous all the time. It's become part of my, like,
You say it
lexicon.
twice, right?
Not every time. I have to admit, not every time.
I always do. Whenever I say this line, I say it twice.
I'm feeling marvelous. I'm feeling marvelous.
I'm feeling marvelous. I'm feeling marvelous. It's like the words flow in and out of each other.
There's an ebb and flow to it.
Yeah.
Who let the monster loose? Do you repeat that every time?
I don't get
Who let
I
the
don't get
monster
that
loose?
far. That's too far for me.
The very next line. So he's feeling marvelous. Who let the monster loose? Is he, I guess, describing himself in that way? Like, who let the monster loose from jail, just in general? But then I think he's kind of using it as a little irony, because people talk about, like, I will let the monster inside me loose in terms of anger. But I think they also can talk about it in terms of performance, right? Like,
Yeah.
a football player might say, like, I'm going to let the monster loose on the field. Where, you know, you go into the studio, you're like, it's time to let the monster loose. But Fivio then says they call me a product of my environment. And I really like the connection between that, because when you say that someone's a product of their environment, you can use it as a critical thing. Like, you know, people that grow up in lower income environments tend to, like, act this certain way or have more issues in life because they're products of their environment, you know.
Right.
Or somebody that is more heartless in a lot of ways, or compassionless for people that have less, can also be a product of their environments. Like, there are these pros and cons of where you grow up, who you grow up around. And in this case, he says, who let the monster loose, and then saying they call me a product of my environment, almost as saying that because I came from the streets, they view me as a monster, which I think is a really amazing, like, critical commentary of the critical commentary.
Yeah, right. That is cool. And to follow that up with, I tell them, nah, I'm God produced. Like, what's being let loose again is like, was made by God. Like, no, this is me. Like, I feel like letting the monster loose, like you were saying, is like he's getting ready to go hard in this song and, like, go after these people around him that represent negative energy. And like if he's a product of his environment, like, his environment is just his God. And, like, this is who he is.
Yeah, like, I am what God produced, and, like, does it depend on my environment? Does it depend on anything? Look, I've transcended my environments.
Yeah, right.
Which is something that I think comes up in Jonah and OK when others talk about coming out of the mud.
Yeah, right. That's such a powerful part of this album too. I mean, you mentioning Jonah and thinking too about, like, Jesus Lord, both Kanye's verse and in the outro and everything. Like, that's such a big part of this album too, is you don't just feel trapped by yourself and like the situation you're in mentally, but just like how society has put you in this box, and how, like, you know, socioeconomically you're at a disadvantage. Like, you're put into these environments and then told, like, you're a product of your environment. Like, it's all these negative forces coming down on you, and it's so oppressive, and it's so hard to rise up from that. And that's what a lot of these verses are doing, or trying to rise up from it.
And that makes me think about what you just said, Kanye in 2018, talking a lot about the simulation and the way that society tries to tell people what they can and can't do, who they can and can't be. And this idea that Kanye is really been on from the beginning of his career of you can't tell me my own limitations.
Right.
And it does feel like it's easy to fall back on, I guess I am just the product of my environment, or I guess the odds were always stacked against me. But one of the core concepts of hip hop from its foundation is that I can rise above my environment. I can rise above the pigeonhole that people tried to place me in and look at where I'm at now. And saying, nah, I'm what God produced feels in line with that. I don't have to view myself as limited based on being a product of my environment. I just know that I'm powerful and I can like make a change no matter where I came from or where I am now.
Yeah. That's why I think a lot of the beginning part of this album is so powerful. Like we keep talking about the songs like having this murky vibe and having like kind of a negative space, but that's this beginning part of the album is where we hear a lot of these young and upcoming rappers, you know, having like these full bars and like being prominent parts of the song and expressing all this angst and this desire to rise up. Like I feel like it's so like Kanye is almost purposely using these people on an album about rising up from that and this whole motif of like kids and like becoming anew and having a better future. Like that all feels part of it.
Yeah, right. Like No Child Left Behind, and he's bringing up all these up and coming artists.
Yeah, and like Fivio delivers a verse like this, like it's crazy.
Which, not to get too comparative, maybe that's not the place to take it. I was just thinking about people keep pointing out all the like Drake features.
I was thinking about that too.
Yeah, and maybe it's like unfair to say that like Drake features were cool, but they were featuring a lot more of like prominent people in the industry. And how many up and coming artists is he really working with on his albums? But he's still working with up and coming artists on his albums, so it's not like not a fair criticism for me to try to levy at Drake.
The criticism I was going to levy is like Kanye, because his album is so focused, and although a lot of people say it isn't, but we think it is, like, and the ideas he's trying to express and like this overarching journey, like when you have that, it allows a verse like this to have so much more power and to have so much more meaning, and there's so much surrounding this verse that gives it weight in a way that I don't. It doesn't necessarily have to be Drake, but let's just use Drake for example. It doesn't really happen on a Drake album, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. So defense good and them guards can shoot. I put him on you, it get hard to move. So I guess he's just saying like the defense he has around him is good. His guards can shoot. And if you're coming at him, which again, like this me against someone else, this confrontation has become kind of a key component to this verse after Fivio got out of jail, felt God breathed. Now we keep going back to this back and forth that he's having with other people. So celebrating himself while also talking about the people that are trying to bring him down. So I put him on you, it get hard to move. Yeah, when you have these guards on you, it's hard to move. Tattoo in my face is the mark of truth. I don't know what that's a reference. Does he have tattoos on his faces?
He's tattooed in my face. I just now realize that's what it says, even if that's what he is saying, because again, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know what that means.
Yep. Let me look up Fivio. There's a tattoo. Yeah, there's one under his left eye and one over his right eye.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know what they mean.
Mark of truth. That's what they mean.
Fivio tattoo meanings.
Let's do this.
We're doing it live.
I feel like he's not popular enough for there to be a page dedicated to what his tattoos mean.
Yeah, there's a page that has like questions, but there's no answers provided.
Well, if we get him on the show, we can ask him.
Yeah, we'll ask him.
Set the record straight, Fivio.
In a complex interview, he talks about the tattoos a little bit, but I don't know if they're the face tattoos.
Oh, okay. We'll do a bonus episode where we talk about all this.
Yeah, right. Oh, no. I got this tattoo after she died, he says, pointing to the name of Yvette's, written in thick cursive script above his right eye. I stayed in the hospital with her the whole time for like 2 weeks. She just went out. I was on my own after that. That's how shit was feeling. So I think that's his mother, if I get the context.
Look at that. See, this is why we do the show. Yep. These kind of live answers like this, like you find out when we find out.
So I think maybe that's what he's saying. Tattoo in my face is the mark of truth, which might just be a reference to his own mom.
Okay.
Or the line is saying something completely different and Genius just has it wrong. But got to watch what you say when they market you. So when you're in the industry and they're marketing you, you got to be careful of what you say, because if you say the wrong thing, things can go south.
Yeah.
I already predicted this, which I think is his fame, his success. Y'all only witnessed it. So you're witnessing his greatness. Look, got a couple old friends that I'm not really clicking with. I know they pray that we settle our differences. And Genius says that Fivio mentions his feuds with former friends, collaborators OMB JD and Drizzy Giuliano. JD expressed his opinion that he put Fivio on, yet received little support now that Fivio surpassed him while he was in jail. Drizzy claimed that Fivio changed up and that he is being ignored and can't even get a conversation with his old best friend. Fivio later released Self-Made, which seemed to subliminally address JD. They saying they made me, make another one. Made a lot of guys turn crip, you saying you ain't my son, then you lying. I know a secret, he really a bitch. I put you in the mix. This led to JD responding with subliminals, which contained direct disses calling Fivio out. Fivio never responded again until now, seeming to want to put the beef to rest. But I think they misinterpreted that Fivio wants to put the beef to rest, because he's not saying, I know, I pray that we settle our differences. Yes. He's saying, I know they pray that we settle our differences. Yeah. As in, they don't want me coming at them. Like, it's in their best interest that we settle our differences because, like, you know, monster, good defense, like.
Or the they as, like, the public, like, people wish we would settle our differences, but we won't.
Yeah, even that. People in the drill scene could be feeling that way. But he says, he contrasts that, like, this is what they're praying for. And he says, I pray that they lower all my guys' sentences. So while they're praying that, like, I no longer have beef with them, I'm praying that just, like, the justice system gets better.
Right. Yeah.
And then turns that into, I got some demons I'm not even dealing with, which is a nice return, because he said earlier, right, that he knows they're demons in the dark liquor and seem to avoid it, right? Like, I know there's demons in that dark liquor, so... like, I'm smarter than this, but now he's admitting that he has some own demons that he's not dealing with. So even though he's a God figure, he has God support, he still has these demons that are kind of haunting him.
Right.
But they feelings, I'm not really feeling it, which maybe he's saying those guys are his demons and they're in their feelings, or just people in general, and he's not giving them the time of day.
I love this. Like, there are so many lines to pick through, and like, I feel like it's a field day for you, Chris. Like, you're just going one by one, line by line, like picking it apart.
Yeah. And I mean, that could be different thoughts too. He has some demons he's not dealing with, and like other people are in their feelings and he's not really feeling what they're dealing with.
Still going.
And I know some members that gave back their membership. I'm guessing that's like gang affiliation.
Could be.
You switched up, like, how you not feeling me? Okay. So that could go back to just people that aren't loyal and changing their affiliations. So even if you're viewing like the gang affiliation for the members, it could also be like people that were members of Fivio's group and now they switched up and they're not feeling him anymore. I think specifically about, I don't think this is in reference to that, but Lil Durk is featured on this album, right? And apparently after Kanye did all the stuff with the Gangster Disciples, and Lil Durk's from an affiliation that hates the Gangster Disciples, he's now like going full tilt for Drake, appeared on Drake's album, has kind of been sending subliminals towards Kanye. And I don't think that's what Fivio is referring to, because that happened after this, but you can see something like that happening in real time, even regarding Kanye.
Yeah, it's the progression here is cool with his verse. Like it feels like the people he's battling, like the circle is growing a little bit. Like at first he's talking about this very specific beef, and then he's like, oh, like you used to be with me, but now you're not. Like you switched up. Like it feels like he's feeling more and more cornered. You know, like his back up is against the wall.
Yeah, ever since the Demons in the Dark Liquor, right? It feels like more and more tensions and antagonisms are being piled around Fivio. It's not just this one confrontation, but there's like many, many more. And despite the successes that he's having, there's just all these complications.
Right.
Look, I act like I care, but I don't really care. Now I live in a new building with amenities, which this is exactly what we're talking about. He has these tensions that are going on, but he's focused on the fact that he's in a new building and that it has amenities. He has a new ceiling with a chimney, which is great because I feel like that doubles as not just his living conditions and celebrating the new crib, and even bringing it back to a crib, right? Given Kanye's chorus at the beginning, like everything we do for the crib, he's making sure he brings in something that connects to that. But saying I got a new ceiling feels like with this verse he's announcing that how you think of me as a rapper, how you think of me as an artist, you got to raise the ceiling on my potential. And smoke comes out of chimney, you know.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
I got a few guys want to finish me, which, coming back again to the confrontation, I don't get too friendly with the enemy, so stays on guard.
Yep.
You got to move different when you're in the industry. Woo. And he gives a little woo, like Fivio is part of the woo with Pop Smoke.
Yeah.
So kind of shouting out the fact that it's everything with the drill scene has changed the industry and was different from what was going on with the industry as a whole. There has been that movement, but also shouting out his group, but also just, you do have to move different when you're in the industry because people are playing games. They're coming for you. You now have a target on your back. You have your what is it when people are on your level? Not coworkers, but you have your not compatriots. Oh, that's gonna bother me.
Friends.
Not friends. It's like people that are in the same industry, like on the same level as you, in the same industry as you. Peers, contemporaries, something like that, that are coming for you. But you also have the public perception of you. Then you have the suits that are looking at you and concerned about what you're doing and how you're speaking and what you're saying. So you really do have to be aware of all of your movements when you're in the industry. So he repeats that a few times and then goes back to the look and hits you again with this faster flow. God blessed me with amazing grace. She fell in love with my day-to-day. So just his lifestyle is so great. I just want my problems to fade away. Yeah. He just listed a lot of problems. Man, I'm tired of guys. I need Gatorade. So I guess just because Gatorade is supposed to replenish electrolytes and is the thing that you drink when you're tired, that's what he needs. Boy, I got on my feet and I made a name. Yeah, especially this kind of ties back to getting out of jail, right? So he went from being in jail, not having a lot of opportunities, to getting on his feet and making a name for himself. And he made that name into a necklace, which I love. Because that's one of the big things when you're in the hip hop space is getting your chain. And so the fact that he not only made a name for himself to get the money to now get a chain that has his name, fantastic. When you're from the bottom and you're working hard just to get to the top, then they got to respect it, right? You admire the grind. Even if people don't like you, you did the thing, right? You made your way. You weren't just a product of your environment. You overcame your environment. if you got a voice, then you got to project it. I love this. This is one of my favorite parts of the song. Just how celebratory this is, and how educational it is, and how it does feel like it's getting back to like the kids. It's giving life lessons from somebody that's been there. So like, hey, you got a voice, project it, make yourself heard, make yourself known. If you got a wrong, then you got to correct it. Like, you know, don't stay prideful and double down on your wrongs, just correct it and move on. And if you got a name, then you got to protect it. Like, once you're at the place where people know you, know that you have a name, like, stand by your name, defend yourself, like, elevate yourself. Such good lessons Fivio's given off here.
Yeah, some Kanye vibes.
Which, did you get to Marlo in The Wire?
Marlo, is that the name sounds familiar. Who is he again?
Marlo is this drug dealer that comes in, I think, in the 3rd or 4th season, and is kind of the new kid on the block that starts taking over. Yeah. I love Marlo. Marlo, I think, is my favorite character in The Wire, and he has this big speech at one point about like, my name is my name, and he's really concerned about his name and how people speak on it. It's kind of it's actually his Achilles heel, because he makes compromising decisions because he's so concerned with how people are treating his name, that it's the only time he makes incorrect moves. But there's something really respectable about how much pride he takes in his name and what people are saying on it. So I always think of that when I hear Fivio say this line.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. If only I was able to finish the show, I would probably get more of it, more of appreciation for him.
You're a monster, Travis.
If
you give me a shock, then you got to electric. That's the only line I don't like.
I knew you were gonna hate this line. Like, the second I heard it, like, because like I really like it, but I was like, I bet this line's gonna trip Chris up and he won't like it.
Yeah, it's just, I don't get. I mean, I get the idea that it's like an electric shock, right?
Yeah.
So if you give me a shock, then you got to electric. But what's that mean when you start getting literal with it?
You want to get literal with it, which is why I knew you wouldn't like it. I like it because of the energy of it and like the idea that's being expressed. Like, if you give me a shock, then like you have to go like full tilt with it. Like, you go electric. Like, I like the image it creates.
I guess so, but I feel like, right, if you're going to shock me, it has to be electric. That makes sense to me. But saying if you give me a shock, then you got to electric, it feels like you gave me a shock and now you got to electric. And what's being electric mean after you've shocked someone?
I think there's a difference between like a shock like you get and like going full electric. Like, if somebody shocks you, then just like don't just be shocked by it. Like, be fully you. Like, don't let it tear you down. Just like be the full version of yourself and move past it or move beyond it or whatever.
Okay, I can get that. So it's like Blastoise.
That's right.
Squirtle, War Turtle.
Right now we're
Blastoise.
only in War Turtle straight, but yes, we're getting ready to go Blastoise.
Okay, so it's like you can give me a shock, but then you got to electric, like take it to the next level.
Yeah.
Okay. Try to live a new life. So I got a new plan that I got to finesse with, which I love that's what this is boiling down to, right? Like, he's lived a life in a certain way up to this point, and we've seen that there have been complications to that. But the things that Fivio has done in the aftermath of who he had been and the decisions that he had made that led to jail, in the aftermath of jail, he's trying to live a new life and he's got this new plan and it's going well so far. And he says, they want me to lose. They ain't part of the woos. Which kind of gets back to him saying that he's keeping like the closest people around him. You have these people that are looking for his downfall. The woos is part of his group, his collective, his people that he identifies with in the industry, like at large. So yeah. But then I've been trying so hard not to move reckless, which really ties back to, I have this new life. I have this new opportunity. Like, people are testing me. They want to set me off. They want to see me lose. They're trying to like undermine me. And if I react to them, if I let them get to me, then I might act reckless and lose everything, which also plays back into the idea of getting off the grid. Like, get off the grid, get away from the people that are trying to get you to move reckless, and like just earn, be good, thrive. I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a great way to end the verse.
Yeah. But the contrast with Kanye is so good, because keep that in mind. I've been trying so hard not to move reckless, because when we jump down to the end of Kanye's verse, it's might do something wild if I feel like you press me.
Yeah, right.
So it's like Fivio's at the beginning of things, and Kanye is already established.
Yeah.
So while Fivio's like, I can't do anything, Kanye's like, oh, I'll do something.
Yeah, watch me. Watch the master.
And you have to wonder, is that empowering? Is that something where Kanye should be more like Fivio, and he's kind of getting ahead of himself, getting in trouble? Like, there's a lot to kind of pick apart in that contrast. And is Kanye coming at it from the more mature perspective? Is he right? Is Fivio right? Is anybody right? How does it play into the rest of the album? It's just one of those little details and little contrasts that opens up a world of subtext that you could start to try to figure out.
Yeah. Okay, before we head into Kanye's verse, I have to say it's getting pretty late in the day for me. And I think this is going to take a bit. Do we want to continue tomorrow? Is that okay?
Yeah, we do in part 2.
Yeah, either a part 2 or we just put these episodes together. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, either one works. We'll just have outfit changes in the middle of the episode.
That's all it's going to be.
Okay.
So I'm going to say goodbye now to the recording. Bye.
Okay. Goodbye, recording.